Have you ever wondered what the ultimate summary of human existence actually looks like? Well, two world-renowned historians, Will and Ariel Durant, spent 40 years documenting the entire story of humanity across 11,000 pages of text. But then, they did something absolutely incredible. They distilled every pattern, every triumph, and every failure into a brilliant 100-page atom bomb of a book called The Lessons of History. Today, we're going to unpack their life's work and uncover the absolute pillars of civilization. But first, I want you to consider this shocking number, 268. Out of the more than 3,000 years of recorded human history, do you know how many years have been completely, globally free of war? Exactly 268 years. That means for over 92% of our recorded existence, human beings have been fighting. So why is peace the absolute exception and war the rule? I mean, are we just wired this way? We're going to decode these massive historical cycles today. But before we answer that, if you're enjoying this explainer and you're new here, welcome to Smart Jeevan. This channel is all about bringing you the profound knowledge you need to navigate life. Do me a quick favor and hit that like, share, and subscribe button so we can keep bringing you these deep dives. All right, let's look at why modern societal shifts are actually part of deeply ingrained historical loops. Pillar 1. Geography, biology, and race. As Will Durant famously noted, geography is the matrix of history. Man, not the earth, makes civilization. Think about ancient Egypt on the banks of the Nile, or the Indus Valley civilization. These rivers, they provided the fertile canvas, right? The necessary starting point. But geography doesn't write the story itself. I mean, the incredibly fertile Mississippi River didn't spawn ancient pyramids. It's human will and leadership, like we see surviving in the harsh deserts of Israel, that actually paints the picture and builds empires. And while geography provides the canvas, our biology really drives the action. Biology teaches us three unchanging lessons. First, life is competition. Second, life is selection. And third, life must breed. You see, our primitive biological drives, our need to consume, to compete, and to reproduce, create the relentless competition that fuels the rise of nations. As the Durant strikingly put it, war is a nation's way of eating. So the crucial point is that history presents us with a really uncomfortable trade-off. Freedom and equality are everlasting enemies. Here's why. If you maximize freedom, natural human inequalities multiply exponentially, simply because the strongest, luckiest, and most talented are going to advance rapidly. On the flip side, if you want to enforce equality, you have to strictly limit personal freedoms to keep everyone on the same exact level. History shows us you simply cannot have both at the same time. Now let's see how this biological drive bleeds into the incredibly dangerous territory of race. Just look at the tragic narrowing of racial superiority theories over time. Back in 1853, Arthur de Gobineau claimed Aryans were superior. Then, by 1899, Houston Chamberlain narrowed this down to Germans. In 1916, Madison Grant narrowed it even further to Nordic, blue-eyed people only. And, well, by the 1930s, Adolf Hitler weaponized this totally unscientific theory, which led directly to catastrophic violence and tens of millions of deaths. But the truth that history reveals is the exact opposite of those theories. Civilization creates race, not the other way around. To completely debunk the myth of racial superiority, the Durants point to incredibly advanced ancient civilizations that had zero so-called Aryan influence. The Chinese invented paper and gunpowder. The Mayans built phenomenally accurate astronomical observatories. The Indus Valley civilization and the Mauryan Empire in India had complex grid systems and public baths, all while Europe was basically still in the wilderness. Moving on to Pillar 2, morals and religion. It's absolutely fascinating to see how directly our morals adapt to shifting economic realities. Think about the hunter era. Greed and aggression were literally necessary virtues for survival. Then, in the farmer era, the economy changed, so society suddenly needed thrift, permanent marriage, and large families to work the land. But jump to the industrial era, and children actually become economic liabilities in the city. This leads directly to the rise of individualism and the breakdown of the traditional family structure. It kind of blows your mind when you realize that, as Durant says, every vice was once a virtue for survival. The aggression, the territoriality, and the greed that we rightly condemn in modern society, those were the exact traits that kept our ancestors alive when they were chasing down game in the harsh wilderness. Our biology hasn't changed, but our economic environment definitely has. And because human morals are so fluid and fragile, society has historically relied on religion to enforce them. Just look at these historical attempts to simply abolish religion. In 1340 BC, the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten abolished the old gods. During the French Revolution in 1793, atheism was fully embraced. In 1917, the Russian Revolution actually executed priests. But guess what? In every single historical example, religion was eventually restored. Looking at this impartially, history reveals a really strong economic correlation with belief. In wealthy societies, where economies advance and strong social safety nets exist, traditional religion often declines. However, in poorer societies, as long as there is poverty, struggle, and economic insecurity, religion remains an absolutely vital unifying force. It provides hope, community, and structure when people need it most. Okay, let's dive into this. Pillar 3, Economics in Action. The raw historical truth presented here is that wars are almost always fought for money, even though they're conveniently hidden behind noble causes. We're told the Trojan War was fought for love and Helen's beautiful face, but no, it was actually about controlling lucrative trade routes for wheat and timber. The Crusades, they were heavily driven by a desire to control the massive wealth of the spice trade. Economics is for sure the hidden engine of human history. The Durants describe economic history through this brilliant biological metaphor: systole and diastole. This is the recurring historical heartbeat. Because human abilities, skills, and let's be honest, luck are unequal, wealth naturally and inevitably concentrates into the hands of a few. But once that concentration reaches a breaking point, an inevitable redistribution must occur. The heartbeat contracts, and then it releases. It just happens over and over again. When that wealth gap gets too large, society has only two historical paths. The first is peaceful redistribution. Think of Solon of Greece. He forgave debts and created a progressive tax on the rich, which ultimately saved Athens from ruin. The alternative? Violent breakdown. Like in Rome, when the Senate totally ignored Gracchus's land reforms, leading directly to his assassination, a century of civil war, and the ultimate collapse of the Republic. The redistribution is always inevitable. The only choice we really have is whether it happens peacefully or violently. Now, this inevitably leads people to ask about pure socialism. Neutrally outlining the historical record, the Durants found that extreme, pure socialist models from ancient Sumeria all the way to the Incas have ultimately collapsed for very consistent reasons. They invariably struggle with bureaucratic corruption, relentless external pressures, the fact that the wealthy continuously organize to game the system, and the sheer reality that total centralization simply fails to manage the vast complexity of human nature. This is exactly why modern states mostly adopt hybrid approaches. Pillar 4, the cycle of power. Over 2,400 years ago, Plato described this precise wheel of government. It cycles from a monarchy, which decays into an aristocracy, which eventually gives way to a democracy. But here's the catch. Democracies are incredibly fragile systems. During times of extreme chaos, inequality, or war, democracies frequently collapse into dictatorships, which then eventually restart the cycle all over again. And this brilliantly illustrates one of the few historical exceptions to that cycle: Rome's Golden Era. From 96 AD to 180 AD, Rome experienced an unprecedented period of good governance under emperors like Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius. Why? Well, because power was passed down through pure merit. None of these emperors had sons; they chose their successors based entirely on ability. The exact moment Marcus Aurelius passed power to his biological son, the Golden Era ended, nepotism returned, and Rome fell right back into chaos. So, considering all these brutal cycles of power and economics, you have to ask, is there any real progress? Yes, progress is real, but it's defined by our increasing control over our environment, not by some magical increase in human happiness. Our human nature and biology haven't fundamentally changed, but our modern ability to conquer geography, cure diseases, and secure food surpluses, that is undeniably a massive leap forward. But here is the ultimate takeaway of this explainer. Will Durant wrote, "Civilization is not inherited. It has to be learned and earned by each generation anew. All of our progress, our laws, our arts, and our morals, literally none of it is in our DNA. Our entire vast civilization relies completely on us actively teaching the next generation." Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. If the transmission of knowledge is interrupted for even 1 century, civilization dies and we revert to savages.
I want you to look at the modern news through this lens of history. Are we truly doing enough to teach the next generation and preserve the pillars we've built? Thank you so much for exploring the profound lessons of history with me today. Keep asking questions and keep learning.